So I tried playing WoW again, just recently. I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but I decided, you know what, I'm doing a lot of complaining, a lot of bitching and moaning. Maybe it's let's, be fair. And maybe I just had regular burnout. Maybe all the bad things that I'm remembering were just burnout from playing the game too much, which can happen with anything you do too much. Combined with the opinions of other people that I'm seeing online that just kind of fit together well, right? So I did what a lot of people do, gave Blizzard $15 more, logged in, and decided to give it a shot. First I tried to jump on a level, 12 Warlock. Started the leveling process in BFA. Let me jump right back in. Kind of reassociated myself with my keybinds and all that stuff, and it was like right in the middle of the quest is where I had stopped, right? Started doing that again, and it didn't really stick. I was like, but it was kind of like right in the middle of something, and it's whatever. So I jumped over to a warrior, level 102, that I hadn't played in quite some time, probably since the very beginning of Legion. First alt that I rolled, didn't complete it, kind of got bored. This is far enough, because warrior is a class that I actually don't have a lot of experience with. So decided to try that. And this character was so old that the keybinds and everything were all fucked up. Like, I hadn't touched them in, probably since 2017. So key bindings no longer work. I just sit there and spend 15 minutes trying to rebind all the keys. I'm a big weak auras nerd, so I like to have all my information for what's available, what spells are off cooldown, all that. I like it up on the screen, so I had to set up weak auras for him. Got all that set up, and then went about it. And, it wasn't boring. I didn't hate it. But I think part of it was that I was doing a quest that I had done, probably almost a dozen times before, questing through Helheim. That whole quest arc. And it's just, it was boring because, it's, I know this. It's kind of that grind, and people will say, well, that's an MMO, and that's true. I mean, that's one thing that I don't, but actually, no, I shouldn't say that. That's one thing that, wow, it is an MMO, but I think settling for the mediocrity of it's just an MMO, you're going to have to grind if you want to play another character. I think that's all the shit they keep adding, all the different attempts at novelty that they keep doing, without really addressing the fact that people like to play different characters. People like to roll different classes. There's all these different classes that do drastically change the way the game plays from one class to another. Even if just kind of superficially in the way things look. It's still fun to play different classes, and that also gets people to keep subbed, right? So if you want to keep people subbed, keep getting their $15 a month, you would think that it would behoove them to improve the leveling experience, especially in the end game. Because they did it a bit for, actually, they did it a lot for the initial leveling experience. Between the Cataclysm revamp and now the current zone scaling changes, there's, one of a million different ways you could go through the leveling process, especially 1 through 60, because there's so much content, and then it can all be done at any level. It means that you can have a different experience traveling up from 1 to 60, and it's great. It's a lot of fun. You can go see zones. I remember when they made those changes, I started rolling ults like crazy, because you could, really enjoy all these zones that I'd never been to before, because you would probably out-level them before you would actually have a chance to complete them. And it was great to go back and see them, because now it was current content. Or zones that you would start but would never finish, because by the time you got, a third the way through the quest arcs and the quest lines, you've out-leveled it, so now the most sense it makes is to go to the next zone. So what they really did was they kind of made the story of each area independent of your level, which was great, because now you can do it. If you just want to finish off, see what's going to happen next, you can. And that's a great choice. And why they've not tried to implement that at max level, and I get it, because vanilla was the whole game, and expansions are expansions, and nobody expects the expansion to be as big as the base game. Fair enough. It's also an MMO, so it's mostly endgame content, especially nowadays. The modern, ever since Burning Crusade, MMOs have been mostly endgame content. The game doesn't really start until you hit max level, right? That's still not a good excuse, though, because I feel they could put even if it was the same quest giver, the same NPC, the same area, but then give each NPC, and this is for like the dumb quests, the majority of them. There's the story quest, but then the majority of the quests you do are go kill 10 boars, go collect 5 apples, randomize that. Give all the random quests, make it, one of, he gives you one of, 6 different quests, right? For all the different collection or kill quests. So each time you play through, it's a little bit different. The story stuff would be the same, the big stuff would be the same, but at least that would add just a smidge of variety in there. And I feel like that would be easy because, again, you could just put, it's especially for kill quests, because I feel like then they're not having to deal with separate items and this and that. It's just a matter of, keeping tally on how many mobs that you've actually defeated. So, back to the point where I got to this 102 warrior. Was not enjoying it because this would be classified as general burnout. I've done the Legion content to death. And partly this was an issue too, and they actually did solve this a bit in BFA, is that Horde and Alliance level the same. Same zones, same quests, same everything for the most part, Horde and Alliance and Legion. In BFA, they have 2 separate zones. Good on you, that's the way it should be. At the very least, that way you can, roll 1 Horde character, 1 Alliance character, 2 almost entirely different experiences leveling. That's good. At least you've now given me 2 paths to have fun. But as I was playing the Warrior, it's, boring content, done it before. So I said, let me try my Paladin, which was my main for the longest time. All the way through the end of Legion, into BFA. First character I got to 120, him and a rogue. But the Paladin's the one because I've always enjoyed tanking. So he's a prop pally. I enjoy tanking. I enjoy the play style of prop pally. I think it's very... I've always liked the kind of, AoE, self-sufficient. They have a lot of buttons to press, too. In a game that's continually getting more boring and more simple, I feel prop pallies are probably one of the more complicated classes, and I'm sure there's somebody who would tell me an asshole and an idiot for saying that, but I feel the balance, they're inherently a little squishier than some tanks because I feel they've got a lot more minor cooldowns, and they're built around that, So, when do I use this? When do I use Ardent Defender's on a 1-minute cooldown? You can almost use it every pull. So, how do you use that? Weaving that. So they've got a nice flow, and I still think that is a little bit true, and I think they're a good kind of reference point for game design in general. If you were to talk about, the changes that Blizzard should make, I think a lot of classes should play like prop pally. Lots of interconnections between their spells. Shield of Righteous is your big main cooldown that helps absorb lots of damage. Judgment resets the cooldown on that. Crits of certain spells reduce the cooldowns of other spells. It's very all interconnected, so you have any given situation, there's a lot of different things going on and a lot of different variables to consider about which spell do you want to use next in order to, set up the next spell or the spell after that. So again, lots of things to consider. It's generally a fun class. So I got on the Paladin, and what I found the most interesting was it was like riding a bike. I was in the middle of that stupid Arathi war front. And as soon as I logged in, I was aggroed something, and I immediately, my fingers just took over, and I started hitting all the right buttons to get the mob down. It was great. I was really surprised. So that kind of like reinvigorated me. I was like, I remember how to do this. It's that ingrained in me that I remember all the buttons. So I said, fuck it, let's jump into a dungeon. I don't even need a refresher. I'm already there. I've remembered all of it. So I said, let's do a heroic. Let's just, try it out. And the Paladin's only level, his eye level was 315. That gives you an idea of how early I quit in Battle for Azeroth. Didn't even have time to grind up, any level of gear. was like, all right, you know, maybe I was wrong. Maybe it was just burnout. Maybe I've been playing Legion, you know, for 2 years, went straight into BFA, expecting the world. And I think maybe I had what a lot of people are saying is that the issue with Battle for Azeroth coming off of Legion is Battle for Azeroth is just Legion 2. It's they didn't change enough, but they changed enough to make it less fun, if that makes sense. They removed enough items and, you know, systems from the game that it feels more flat than Legion did, but it's still all kind of the same as Legion, so it's not a new experience rather than change. Because they like to do that. They like to change things a lot in between expansions, whether it's just to keep people engaged or they're trying out different things, you know, whatever. Blizzard does what Blizzard does. But, I guess I shouldn't say that because what Blizzard does doesn't work, really. But it's, you know, it's a Legion and Battle for Azeroth felt the same in a lot of ways, but Battle for Azeroth felt more watered down. So I decided I was going to do this dungeon. Random heroic. I'm a tank. Queued instantly. It's good. So I got heroic Motherlode. Jump right in, kind of reassociating myself, kind of remember like, oh yeah, tab targeting, blah, 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 click the guy, find the guy, did this and that, which targets do which, I can't remember, you know, trying to remember which mobs are the, you know, the ones you got to worry about, all this good stuff. It all came rushing back to me. We start polling, we start going through, and it's boring. It's so boring. But it's not the gameplay that's necessarily boring. Because as I said, prot pallies are, you know, a somewhat involved class, I think, especially at a really low high level, because, you know, I was not undergeared for heroics, but I was at the point where I was, you know, hits hurt. So I was having to use, you know, Hand of the Protector, Light of the Protector. I was having to use, you know, various cooldowns, and I was having to think about it. But it was just kind of like, again, the idle RPG clicker concept where I'm just kind of, you know, just slowly progressing forward, do the next thing, do the next thing. Like, I really think that's the problem, is that you can build, you know, you can have, you know, complex enough, engaging enough individual, you know, your side of the screen gameplay, but if the reason you're doing everything isn't really there, because there's no sense of, it's not even a sense of progression. It's a bit of that, because you also start to think about, well, you're not going to get any gear. Titan forging and all that bullshit is probably going to, so you get a piece of gear, but then, you know, so you've got a random chance to get a piece of gear, and then you have another random chance for that gear to be useful. And that's something that people have complained ad nauseum about and done a much better job of explaining than I have, or ever will. But yeah, the Titan forging and all that shit is a problem in and of itself. So you start to think about that. You start to think about, what's the point? You're another quiet, silent, you know, faceless, nameless person, just, you know, one foot in front of the other in this dungeon. Pull the group, kill the group, pull the group, kill the group, pull the group, kill the group. And it just feels pointless. It's like, why? I sat there going, why am I doing this? What's the point? Who are these people? And I really think that it's, you know, and people have talked about this, again, at length. Nixium's got a really good video kind of pertaining to Classic WoW and why it's going to be a good thing and why he's concerned about certain changes that Blizzard plans on making to Classic. You know, these quote-unquote quality of life changes. And a lot of it just pertains to, you know, things like sharding and the loot system. And Asmongold actually talked about it as well, and I think a few other people have talked about it, about how they wanted to remove the potential for ninja looting, and they wanted to basically bring the personal loot system to Classic WoW because they think it's more fair and this and that. And then the quick summary is that the potential for people to be assholes and steal shit in a random group in a pug was really good incentive to not group with random people as we are now. That incentive is really important because it's what helps build a sense of community. Because right now, why should I bother trying to find a good guild and a good group of people and making friends with people so that I can have some people that I know who I can relate to and have fun with? Because if I just want to get in the game and play it, I can just queue random and just get in the game and play it. But I think what Blizzard's mentality is, that you can just get in the game and play it. There you go. Looking for group, just hit I, press yes, and you're off. But I think what they're missing is, because due to being a little out of touch, is that people don't want to just get in the game and play it. People want, it's an MMO. If I wanted to do that, because looking for groups is sensibly a single player experience. There's 4 other people playing that game with you, but they don't talk. You can't influence them at all. They're ostensibly, they're ostensibly NPCs just doing what they do. I mean, they really could. Blizzard could revamp Looking for Group and then plug in some AI that plays, randomly, that plays characters that were randomly chosen from the armory. And nobody would notice. Except that maybe the groups would get more competent. And they really could. And, and that's the real scary part, I think, about, Looking for Group. And they're kind of like touting their AI development on the island expedition things. I'm like, that could be the future of WoW, is that it becomes an online single player game, wherein instead of being in a group with people, looking for raid and looking for group settings are ostensibly just you playing with a bunch of bots that are playing the characters of real people, but they're not real people. And at that point, I'll just go play an offline game, because there's, single player offline games that provide more engaging, more fun gameplay. It's what really defines WoW is that MMO quality, the massive multiplayer online. And so me walking through Motherlode on my Paladin, again, engaged by the actual gameplay on my end, found it to be incredibly boring, because what am I doing? Because I can't say, guys, make sure you're interrupting the girl with the freeze ray thing, the cocktail waitress mom. Guys, stun the guy before he runs into the big thing, because nobody listens. Because why should people listen? We're gonna push through it anyways, right? And that also ties into the difficulty of things, is that the kind of the AoE shitfest that dungeons have become. There's no real point to do this or that or play the game with strategy, because you're gonna down it anyways. Just blast through it with enough AoE and you'll get there. And the sad part is they added these challenge modes in the form of Mythic Plus, and Mythic Plus is even more to that point. It's like Mythic Plus is such a good idea. Let's take our regular dungeon content, scale it by a numerical factor based off of this keystone level, add in some additional concepts of in the form of the dungeon can be procedurally modified, to have more enemies, more damage, more this, more that, and base it off of these terms and prefixes that we assign these stones, like it so far. And then, so what's the point of all this? Speedrun. No, why? Why would you make it a speedrun? Well, because a speedrun could be, the short answer once again is esports. Because when you make it a speedrun, you make it something that you can put a leaderboard to. You make it something that becomes inherently a bit of a challenge. And not a challenge in the sense that it's difficult and fun to overcome, but a challenge and it's something that somebody wants to do better than you. And so that's real reason. And then all of a sudden, and I remember I had this thought when I first saw Mythic Plus and the concept, and I'm like, I like the idea, but why speedrun? And I'm like, oh, they're going to try to push this into esports, and then sure enough, what they do, the Mythic Plus Invitational and all this bullshit. Because they're trying to generate hype in a very cheap way. Because, as I think I've mentioned this before, esports is a really good way to generate free hype. Because then you get streamers and YouTubers and all these people basically doing this competitively in an esports sense, because people want to watch, they like to watch people compete. Again, it's the same reason, and sports is so popular everywhere. Soccer, football, basketball, baseball. People like to watch people compete. It's about choosing a side, rooting for your side and having a winner in the outcome. But what it's bad for is the game in general, and that's what people saw, because what happens with Mythic Plus is if you're not doing well, if the run goes bad off the cuff, you're not going to make the timer. Fuck it, I quit. I'm out. Fuck this noise. It's stupid. It's pointless now. Rather than what they could have done with Mythic Plus, which would have been to, I think, make it even more difficult than it already is. It's not that difficult. Shut up. Make it more difficult and bring back that old feeling where each mob pool was a fucking event. Like, you had to plan. This guy's got to go down first. He's the most dangerous. We've got to keep this other mob completely tied up, stunned, silenced, and all that, because it's going to heal the whole group for just a shit ton of damage. They've got to be shut down, but we really got to kill the first guy first, because he's got that stacking buff that he'll end up killing the tank, real fast. And then the other guys we can mop up as we go, do a little AoE, but then we'll focus fire them down after we get the first two down. And that's how every pull in every dungeon and every raid used to be. But the thing is, it required coordination, but that coordination was fun. It wasn't a chore. It was fun, and that's what Mythic Plus should have been, where the mobs and everything scale up and up and up to the point where each pull has to be planned, and with the point being that the end result wouldn't be based off time. The end result, if you've managed to complete the dungeon, would be a much better cache of treasure and stuff. But it would be much harder to get there, but it wouldn't be something that you race through. It would be something that'd be slow and methodical, and I think people would enjoy that a lot more. And you could really say, why not both? Why not have do Mythic Plus, which is, which would be this kind of progression, scaling progressive content where the mobs get harder and harder, and you require a lot more forethought and planning, and then also do kind of the more generic, just straight scaling and speedrun and call it something else. Or make the speedrun can stay Mythic Plus and introduce something else. And I really think that's the way the game should have gone.